My name is Howard Caddy, and I'm founder and head coach of Career Oyster. Today, we are talking to another executive of a assessment company, a testing company, and he's got a very unique product that he's been working on for most of his career, and it helps identify the innate expertises and skills inside a candidate. And this is Chuck Russell. And for over 35 years, he's worked with companies to optimize their talent acquisition and talent management. And he practices is all about behavioral data. He's also written a book on Amazon, I think, out in the market called No Bad Hires. So we're going to hear some interesting stories and approaches that are very appropriate in today's world. Chuck, welcome to the session. And please introduce yourself and give people a little background of your company.
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here, Howard. I was a management consultant for a number of years, and when you do that, you listen to people's challenges and their goals for their organization, and your goal as a consultant is to try and figure out how to help them do that. And you talk to lots and lots of people, trying to you end up almost like a detective. This person's telling you, well, this is why that's happening, and this other person said, well, no, that's not it. It's actually this, and it's this, and you're supposed to sort all those things out. And one of the things that I learned by chance is I went to a conference, and this wonderful guy explained that people have hardwired personality traits. In other words, their personality traits don't change. There's a level when you get down to the foundation, and that's what they are. Now, what does that mean? Some people say, oh my God, it puts me in a box. No, actually, that tells you a strength that will never go away. And so if it won't go away and you always have it, well, the question is, well, how do I best use it? And that's one of the things that has intrigued me for the 35 years Howard mentioned. The other is that we also have hardwired cognitive abilities, and that's how we think, how we learn, how we communicate. It's a lot of things, and that doesn't change either. We can learn new things, we can learn new information, but our ability and how we process that information is there. It's there. It's not going to change. And it's an interesting thing in that particular one because people think, well, does this say I'm smart? Well, depends on what you're trying to do. In other words, smart, we misunderstand that. We think that the smarter you are, the better it is. Well, that's not true. Most college professors, I don't care where we're talking, if they at Harvard, Southern Cal, the University of Georgia, it doesn't matter. Most are slow learners. They don't learn quickly. Well, what's their job? Telling the same story about the same class to class after class after class after class. It's not a complex thing. Now, does that mean we don't have some brilliant professors? Yeah, absolutely. We got Friedman up in Chicago and Feynman a long time ago out
I know him.
doing a world of things. Their research, they did research, they wrote books, they did that to occupy their mind, which really wasn't engaged by talking to class after class after class. It's interesting. Thorstein Veblen was an economics professor in the early 1900s. He put up his office hours on day one, and by the end of the first week, they had declined to where he was there for 5 minutes a day because he didn't like wasting his time with students. He liked to write books and do serious research. But anyway, I learned that people had these, and it changed my world. Because I said, wait a second, if people have hardwired personality traits and cognitive abilities, that shatters every paradigm we have on hiring, training, and management. It means we can't train anyone to do anything. They've got to have the strengths that match up with that training. If we hire people, we need to hire people who have the strengths to do that job. or we need to recognize that they don't have those strengths. I'll give you the quick, easy example is there's a trait, we could call it assertiveness. That if you think of a bell curve, a nice, big, beautiful bell curve, I'm sure you've seen sometime in your life.
Oh, sure.
If someone is on the south end of the bell curve, that means they're not assertive. They don't like confrontation. They don't want to debate anything. They're not going to sell anything either.
Right.
See?
Absolutely.
So think about that, and it's one of the practical things that we discovered as we built the company. Is it is easy to identify people who cannot do that job. It is much more difficult to find out the superstar that's going to do that. There's too many variables there. But basically, let's eliminate the people who can't do it, who are missing something that's necessary.
So if you look at a group of 10 candidates, let's say in general, and you're measuring them, what's a typical ratio of who can do the job out of 10 of them that you'll see?
Well, it certainly depends on what that job is, because obviously some are harder to find than others. And we actually, the thing I think is critical when you're making things and supposed to help people, they should be easy to use.
Right.
So in other words, all of the Best Work stuff, which is the name of the principal product that we do, Best Work, anyone off the street can read it and understand what it says. You know, I'm going to stick with your 10 people in just a second, but the first thing that you want to do is eliminate people who can't do it. All right? So what we want to know in that job, we identify for every job, and we've done this for hundreds of jobs, what are the critical factors that you need to do that job? And a critical factor is something you can't do the job if you don't have it. In other words, if you're short, basketball is not going to work well for you.
That's right.
We're not talking about any other sport. We're just talking about basketball. And you may be eager, you may be the hardest worker there, you may be the smartest guy on the team, but I got to tell you, if you're 4.5 feet tall, you're not going to make an impact in basketball. So we think of what are those three critical factors. Sales is, again, my easy one. What does the salesperson got to do? Number one, they've got to persuade people to make a buying decision.
Yeah.
Really simple. If you can't do that, you can't sell.
Yeah.
You may tell wonderful stories. You may be a delightful human being. You may be exciting in 1,000 ways. But if you can't persuade people to make a buying decision, we don't need you in the candidate pool. Second thing is, what is it can you sell? How we think and process information, the cognitive abilities I mentioned earlier. If it's a solution sale, a complex sale that has a lot of variables to it, you've got to be a fast processor, because every deal you walk into is going to be different, and you not have a lot of time to demonstrate that you can possibly help them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I experienced it in my teams and in myself. Good. I like that.
You also have product sales, where this is a product, it's a good product. It could be anything, whatever. It could be a house cleaner, it could be a vacuum cleaner, whatever, a car. But that's a product. Anyone can learn the information necessary about that product because it's the same product to everybody you show it to. So that means I don't have to be a fast learner. I don't have to be a fast processor to sell a product.
Yes.
So the second critical factor we look at in this sales example I'm using is, do you learn fast? You learn more slowly. That's going to determine if you can be in the candidate pool for this product. And let's say another one, and this varies depending upon the product. Some sales are what I call a presentation sale. That means I'm going to tell you stories about how this is going to change your business, change your life, or whatever, and you're going to get excited about it. You say, oh, I want one of those. I want to feel that way. Yeah. Okay, well, that's a presentation sale. Okay, well, there's a hardwired personality trait. And part of the people in the world on the high end, they walk around showering enthusiasm and energy on the planet. They walk into a room and everybody's paying attention. They start telling a story. They love to tell stories. and they do a wonderful job of it, and that's terrific. Well, on the other end of the scale, those people, it costs them energy to interact with people. They don't have the energy. They don't want to do that. It's sort of like watching. You never know what movie to go with these days. You know, whether you like John Wick 4 or Star Wars. It's like watching it on a 9-inch black and white TV. Their presentation isn't going to catch anyone's attention.
Got it.
So, but we've got those. The first thing we do is we look at, are we good with those 3 critical factors? Okay, so you're in the pool now. We can now look at other things to see. One of them, for example, is details. Obviously, selling involves a lot of details. That's an important factor. It's not a critical factor.
Right.
Now, we could take another job and we could say a data research person, a data analyst. Well, now details becomes a critical factor for that job. You can't be a data analyst if you're crummy with details. I, for one, am beyond crummy with details. I should never be allowed to be a data scientist.
Ditto.
Yeah. So the critical factors change depending upon the job. And the way that we do it with Best Work is we want to explain that. We translate that data into a description of how someone will actually do that part of the job. It's simple. We always want it simple. You know what people want is something easy to use. Easy to
Yes.
use is a good thing. I don't care how complicated and wonderful it is. If it's hard to use, I don't want to do it. People don't. Someone bought a Best Work license and called me, and I knew that they were kind of a friend, but not a close friend. And he said, "Listen, Chuck, I just bought a license for Best Work, and I just tested my first person, and I'd like you to walk me through how to use the report." I said, "Yeah, I can do that." I said, "Why don't you read the first line on the report?" And he said, "Okay. Cannot persuade people to make buying decisions." Silence. You hear silence. And he says, "Listen, Chuck, I think I got this." I mean, that's the way things should work.
That's right.
I'll tell you one crazy story.
Sure.
On a giant scale. We had a client who was getting 1,000 applications a week.
Ooh, sounds like everybody today.
Yeah. 1,000 applications a week for 42 jobs. And they were largely recruiting in Latin America and the Caribbean. And so the first thing that happened is they had to prove their English fluency, which is not a difficult thing to do. And that typically brought the number down to 500. So we still got 500 candidates weekly.
Wow.
Well, what are you going to do to sort through those? Well, they were reading some kind of resume things, and sometimes they'd do a little video interview. They're doing all kinds of stuff. And the guy was describing, that's our big bottleneck because, it's not like we got 500 and moved them through. We got 500, and then we had 700 kind of stuck, and now we got 9. There's a challenge. Well, if you use behavioral data, the moment we knew that you were fluent enough in English, you did a 25-minute online thing with Best Work. And this is where almost magical happens. In a matter of seconds, I'm talking just 1 or 2 seconds, we screened down all the people who could not do those 42 jobs.
Wow.
Like, poof. They're gone. Not only that, the data sorted the remaining candidates into the jobs that they could perform best. And that took place in a matter of seconds. I'm talking 4 or 5 seconds. I'm being generous too. I think it's supposed to be less than that. Isn't that crazy?
Did you get resistance from the candidates taking the test?
No.
They would.
And honestly, they know what they're doing because people talk about job seekers want a job. Well, we didn't fully explain that, did we? job seekers want a job that they can be successful at to start
That's-
with.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, if the NFL calls me today and says, "Listen, Chuck, we need you to be a linebacker for the Patriots," that is not a job I want.
That's right. Or you got to block and tackle and come to things.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
These things look like freight trains. No, I don't want to do that.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing. For example, if someone says Charlie tells wonderful stories, he got to be great in sales. Okay, and Charlie, he's got that. Remember the presentation thing? Charlie's got that. He's got that all down. He tells wonderful stories. Everybody laughs. What Charlie doesn't like is any kind of confrontation or debate. So Charlie doesn't want to persuade anyone to buy anything. I can tell you stories about this stuff, and maybe you'll buy it, but I'm not going to ask you to buy it.
Yes.
Does
Yes.
that make sense?
Oh,
Isn't it?
so true.
You see, so if you explain to people what's going on, they want that. They don't want to get it. We do a lot of stuff with veterans, and I'm incredibly militant about the way that veterans are, I'm going to say, assisted by some companies. They'll hire a vet, and they mean well. They're just saying, okay, we're going to do our part. We'll hire 5 vets. Well, how did they know those vets could do those jobs? That's because veterans can do this and this and this. No, that's not true. Veterans are scattered and as random as the rest of the planet. We pulled 100 veterans randomly from a pool, and I will tell you that it describes a bell curve. They are scattered the same way all other people are. But if you can take, and I'll get off my veteran soapbox because I can really go down that road. We just started a nonprofit called Celebrate Vets so that we can give this stuff to all veterans.
Good. Good for you. So what I'm picking up from this and what the audience I'm sure is hearing is that you identify these three criteria that are absolutely necessary, right?
Yep.
Critical for success in that job. And based on the fact that most people want to succeed, they don't want to get into a job. I can share that belief with you with people that have left jobs and move around and then it's stressful, etc. Then the second category is things that might be important to do the job.
Yep.
And that could be a variety of things. And then is there a third element that is also in play, or?
What's the third element? We just call it nice to haves.
Nice to have.
Okay. Because you see, one of the problems that recruiters have in today's world is they are given a job description. Okay, well, let's think about that job description. We're sitting around and we're saying, well, they need to do this, and well, they need to do B too. We need to do this. Don't forget this. This is also important. And before long, they have crafted a description that sort of is Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman, all together. And it's nonsense. Not only that, it's a whole bunch of stuff. You're not separating it down to what's really important here. Interestingly, the magical question, which I came up with when we started doing this, define critical factors. It's a cool question. How do smart, hardworking people fail at this job? I want to tell you, you can ask people. I used to keep the numbers. You can ask people, tell me how someone can do this job really well. How we're trying to find the best candidate we could possibly find. Well, what happens is, they need to be super strong. Yeah, and we knew that it would be helpful if they could fly. Yeah, and if they had X-ray vision, before long, you've got this giant list that doesn't help you find anybody.
Right, absolutely. It's
interestingly, when we ask, and by the way, it took them a long time to pull all these things together. You'd ask, tell me how a smart, hardworking person fails at this job. And they say, oh, they don't follow the directions. oh, they don't consistently do this. They don't make enough calls. They didn't say this in their self. It's like a machine gun. Everybody knows what those are. And the beautiful thing is they're specific. That's where you get the critical factors. People used to say, well, how in the world do you do it? No, it's really simple. We've done this with hundreds and hundreds of jobs.
It's a very, I've seen a lot of assessments in my life and tests and whatever. And a lot of them are very fluffy and whatever, and they don't really tie it to the job like you're doing here. So you have these three levels, which I love. Let's shift the topic a little bit and say, okay, we have these three levels, and that's why we're going to hire you to do some recruiting. And let's take the example even of recruiting firms who are trying to find people for a customer. So
Sure.
they wanna. There's advantages to making good hires, and there's real disadvantages and frustration when the hires are not good. Okay, so and on the front end, the candidates have a little resistance, or let's say the recruiting person might have a little resistance because he wants to have a larger pool of people. But there are advantages of putting in the right people, of not having things. So let's talk about that process and how you can see it being advantageous, especially then with the coming world of AI, where a lot of transitions will occur.
Yeah. I mean, AI is a very real threat to a lot of jobs. Also, a lot of opportunities that are born from AI. And it's interesting. I had the privilege of working with a guy named Andy Song, who was the co-chair of the original AI conference in China,
Okay.
the worldwide conference on it that kind of kicked off everything. And Andy and I were in Paris for an EOC meeting, and he said, you know, Chuck, let me tell you something about AI. It will do more than people imagine and less than many people imagine.
Yeah, probably.
He said it is far more complicated. It's not like a magical wave that's going to come over the world. But what the problem with dealing with AI and job changes is you've got to understand what your strengths are. And that's not how the world works. What happens when recruiters are seeking candidates or companies are seeking candidates, they look at, well, so what have you done in the past? And someone said, well, I was a left-handed pipe fitter. But I'm looking to do something else now because there's a lot more things I could do. No, 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 no. You're really a good left-handed pipe fitter, and that's not something we need right now. But I can do. Wait a minute, I can do some other things. I said, no, I think you need to stick with what you're good at, and that happens all the time.
Absolutely.
Because we don't have. Think about it. If you're trying to sort through candidates, what do you really know? What is it that you can grab out there and get it? Feel like you got a handle on it? Well, we could say all candidates must have a 4-year degree. Do you know why they ask that for some jobs?
The line in the sand.
It's a yes no.
Yeah.
It's a yes no. It's a kick out if you didn't do.
Right.
This guy was telling me one time. He said you've got to have 10 years of experience at this, and I said why? He said, well, you need. He said you need that. You need that to do this job. And I said, well, could you help me understand that? Why? I said, I know the job. It's not that difficult. I said, you could probably train someone in 2 or 3 months, and yeah. Well. What he never was able to answer, which is the reality, is in sorting through those people. If he put in 10 years of experience, that would screen out a bunch of them because they didn't have 10 years, and they're irrelevant to how they could do the job. It was just a screening tool.
Right.
I've seen that done with the 10 years of experience, the 4-year degree. Oh, gosh. It's not in there to help anybody. It's there to get screened, something objective that I can screen somebody out on.
Right.
You don't want to do that. I wrote a paper called employee resilience. They want him as a resilient workforce. That's it. They were talking about what does it take to have a resilient workforce. A resilient workforce means that the people have got to understand what their strengths are so that they can see what kind of jobs can I do. Not kind of jobs what I have or anything, but what can I do. If I don't know my strengths, I don't have agility in the job. I really have to be stick with being a left-handed pipe fitter
Right.
because I don't have another story to tell. That's
And in this, I mean, that's so relevant. It's been relevant in my coaching background for the last 10 years or 15 years. I looked at the whole process differently. But especially when transitions are going to occur, et cetera, and people, they can do lots of things. You can basically sell what you're capable of, and you can sell what you know, and you can sell what you want to do just as easily as you can sell what you have done.
yeah.
I've done that in all kinds of areas. Yeah.
Well, what the behavioral data does, it gives somebody something to present. We have a report that I did for career stuff, and it's called "What I Bring to the Job,"
Perfect.
and it describes what I bring, and you could use that for any job. It might, for example, say, I'll use I'll use me. It says, Chuck doesn't need a lot of planning and preparation. He can do things on the spur of the moment in reactive situations.
Yeah.
Chuck learns extremely fast, and it should take no time for him to learn and transition to different parts of your business. Okay, hear how positive that sounds?
Right.
It's talking about what I can actually do. If we think of sports, particularly, let's think of football for a minute. Once I escaped that job a few minutes ago, someone's tackled and the linebacker goes down, and they've got to replace him. That coach isn't looking around saying, "Well, who's playing well this week?" You know, who feels lucky today? You know, not you, John. You look down. I don't think you're up for it today. No. They got a computer there that's saying the next best linebacker that we have who can jump this high and do this and this and this is the right person to put in the game.
Right.
It is their ability to access the strengths of the players which allows them to have versatility at dealing with what's happening in the game.
Exactly.
It's the same to be true. That's what behavioral data can do for people. And it's not always. I, for example, could see. Oh God, I'm going to use me as an example. Remember, I said I'm terrible at details. I'm horrible with details. I'm beyond help with details. I also don't follow rules. The beauty of what I do is I'm incredibly creative, and that's lovely. But if your world is rules, it's not the same thing. Because I didn't know any better, I was once recruited to be an executive at Macy's. You can imagine Macy's. And remember, no rules. They called me into the office one time and said, "Mr. Russell, we do not want anything done quicker, better, cheaper. We don't want any. I want you to do it like the big book on the shelf says to do it." Well, that would be an example of a job that
That's not going right.
didn't fit me. Okay, but why was I there? Was I happy in that job? No, I hated the job every day. I deal with all these little niche, crappy things that didn't make any sense. But why do you do that? Well, because Dad told me never to quit. You know, if you work hard enough, you can do anything. And we've got people who are stuck in jobs. That's because somebody told them don't quit, and you work hard enough, you can do this.
This is. I mean, it's so right on that there's advantages for job seeker to know what he should be looking for, to target and to go after jobs that they can be successful with less effort, with ease, as opposed to struggling every day in the job to keep up. The second thing is from a recruiter's point of view, they don't want to have a bad hire or a fallout or someone that is unsuccessful there, because that just complicates them and ruins their reputation a little bit from a quality point of view. And third, the hiring company would also want to know this ability, because they want someone that's going to go into that job and not struggle to stay there a couple years or 3 years or 4 years at least to try to do the job. They would enjoy the job, and when you enjoy something, you're successful at it. Isn't that
Yeah.
pretty much a little summary of what I heard?
Well, let me add one little thing to that. We can't always get the best job that we particularly want. Well, what does that data tell us? Because if I really know my strengths and you say, well, I need to do this, but I'm not a real good fit for that. I'm going to work, I want to have to, because I'm no good with details and the job requires it. The job I want is the next job. So I know going in that I'm going to have to put extra effort, triple check everything to get that done so I can be successful at this job, so I can be promoted to the job where I'm really wired.
Interesting.
Does that make sense? When I've done speeches, when I've done lectures, there's an example I used to use. I just say, let's take a little baseball team, and we've got Charlie, and we put Charlie in he comes onto our baseball team, and we put Charlie over at second base. And Charlie does a phenomenal job, and on a 10-point scale, we would rate Charlie an 8. And so, what do we do now? And we say, well, Charlie's an 8. That's a good performance. We need to promote Charlie. And so we promote Charlie over to wherever, and Charlie does an even better job. And we say, oh, God, this is incredible. And so now we move him down to the next position in our team as catcher. And Charlie's value was his quick hands, fast moving. He could do anything. And so what did we have him do? Squat down behind home plate, where he didn't have to move quickly at all, and his hands were some help, but not much. And so we say, well, that his performance has gone down. He hits the Peter principle. He's gone. And so we get him off the team. He's hired by the next team down the road and put in a shortstop, which was the ideal position for him. We just never let him get to that one.
Got it. Yeah, that's so true, and that's a very clear example. It's true even in business, right? That Peter principle, how people get put into jobs where they really don't have this natural, let's say, innate, hardwired skill to do
Yeah.
that job well, and therefore they struggle at that job, whereas they excelled at a job below that, or something where they were doing different volumes or different ways of behaving.
Exactly. No one goes, I've been doing this a long time. I've never met anybody who didn't go to work to do a good job.
Right.
I've met some who did a terrible job, but that wasn't their intent when they went to work that day.
Right. I've hired many, many people, and especially transitions from into recruiting from a discipline of some kind, accounting, IT, etc. But it's very difficult for them to make that transition because their innate skills were very detailed and very. I don't want to make a mistake, which is the opposite of what a salesperson has to have.
Oh, I once heard this guy proudly describe, this was in a conference I went to, and this person said, yes, we've been compelled to close this factory here, and what we've able to do, we are stepping in and we're providing training for the 300 people who were workers in the factory, which was a manufacturing facility, and we're going to teach them how to become software programmers. I'm sorry. What led you to believe that they could do that? In other words, someone sold them the capability of providing software training, but they did nothing to see who could actually do that.
Uh,
It's
even if you can do things, there's lots of things I I can do and other people can do, but maybe for 3 weeks. And after that, I'm really in trouble.
Exactly.
I don't like
No,
it.
no, you're exactly right.
Right? And at that point, it's not, I can do a lot of things, but where's my sweet spot and where do I belong where I can excel and then build a career and then build leadership and build other things in my sweet spot? And I
Well,
really
yeah.
see the value of this kind of an assessment.
Well, let's expand that just a little bit because the day that you got hired using Best Work and they said, "Wow, this is exactly right for the job," and we put it in there where everybody's happy. Well, we also told you how to interview the person with the. We also told you how to onboard them. We also told you what's the best manager match for them. And on the next day, you're going to use that same information. Your behaviors are wired the same way. And so we know how to put you on a team. We know how to put what roles to play on a team. We know how to tell you how you can collaborate.
Interesting.
Anything that has to do with thinking, learning, or behaving, behavioral data informs it. I wrote a little book. It's almost like a kid's book. It's not actually available anywhere at the moment. It's called Charlie and All the Places His Data Went. And it tells the story of Charlie in a job search getting hired by this company and how the data was there, everything that Charlie did through his career. It tells you how to train people. It tells you all the stuff. And it gives you, it's one of the things that gives you confidence. When people don't understand what they can really do, it's not a happy place because when they can't do it, they go home and they're unhappy and they kick the
Absolutely.
dog and yell at their spouse and it's a bad place. When you put people in the right job and you can see what they can do, well, they put the same effort in, and guess what? It works. They come home, they hug their spouse, pet the dog, and it's a lovely evening.
That's right. I think I really appreciate the structure and the strategy and uh, the obvious truth to what you're saying about people. They have these innate skills that they have forever. They don't go away. And the more you can align to them, the more they will perform better, but they'll like their job and their life better. And I think
Yeah.
that's a key element of satisfaction. I think that's pretty much what we have time to talk about today, but hopefully we'll extend this in the future with some specifics. Um, Best Work Data out of Atlanta. You work nationally with companies and everything, right?
And internationally, actually.
And internationally. Okay, and I see the market coming at you for a lot of reasons as it changes and goes through these transitions, et cetera. People and recruiting companies and hiring managers are all going to have to change. And the way you extended the product's helpfulness into onboarding and onto performance in the job afterwards it's almost like a long-term benefit of having that knowledge. It's kind of like having your blood types or your health records and knowing what you're strong or weak in so you can
No, that's
stay
good.
healthy. And that's what you're telling someone. Here's what my strengths are in these areas, and now let's take advantage of them. So I think it's a great application. I hope it gets adapted by more people. I know I would really look at this if I were running my recruiting company. So give them a little final of how to reach you personally at Best Work Data, and we'll hopefully continue in the future here.
Just go to bestworkdata.com. You can see one of our websites, and there's ways to contact us there. We're happy to answer your questions or do whatever you need.
And how about the book you have?
Oh, and the book you can get it on Amazon. It's a lot. It's kind of a fun read because I write very simple stuff that people like, and it's a lot of case studies. It's telling how we use behavioral data in dozens of companies. And you can easily relate it to whatever you're doing or whatever place that you're in.
Right. The title
No
is
bad
No
hires.
Bad Hires. And I'll be honest, I read it cover to cover. And I love the fact that we dispel the myths of it that are prevalent in the marketplace. And once we dispel those and we go down to what's really happening, we can make improvements in our hiring and then hopefully our long-term employment of people and in success. All right. So thank you. I'm Howard Candy with Career Oyster. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll see you next time on the Career Oyster podcast.